So we're gonna start looking at patch pockets, and patch pockets have quite a lot, believe it or not, to break down. So we're gonna start off with this top bit, and this top bit is called the facing. Some pockets are lined, patch pockets are lined, so you don't have to necessarily worry about this, but it's very common to find in your garments a pocket that has been finished off with a facing, so you don't end up with a raw edge along the top. So I'm going to teach you how to stitch those now. So what I've got in front of me is a patch pocket pattern, rectangular one, and then also I've cut out the fabric piece. I've also got a fabric marker and a ruler. So the first thing we're going to need to do is transfer this. So this line on a pattern, if you've got a dash line going into the pattern piece itself, it normally indicates that this is where it needs to be folded or stitched. So in this case, this is where the facing is going to go. So what I'm going to do is mark out on the fabric this line and both of the edges, the long edges of this pocket. And I'm going to draw with a ruler where I need to fold. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold across that line. Give it a press. And it's probably a good idea to also fold down that raw edge at the very top. So your facing will end up being stitched and finished like so. Okay, so that's fine. Now, if we were to stitch this along, we would end up with raw edges on this part, and we don't want that. Similarly, if we were to stitch along and then fold the seam allowance in, we would end up, I don't know if you can see this, but would end up again with a little bit of a visible fold, and we don't want to do that. And if you go and look at some of the cheaper clothing you can find, a lot of garments have been finished in that way, but we're going to be better than that. I'm going to show you how to do it. So the best thing to do is to turn your pocket over to the right side, and where that initial fold line on the pocket is, we're going to fold that across at that point. So we're basically folding it right side to right side, and I'm going to place a pin in there just to hold it all into position. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to stitch at the seam allowance, which we're going to do at 5/8 from the fold of the facing all the way to the edge and on this side too. And I'll show you what happens as a result. Right, so I'm now going to stitch this into position. So I'm going to do a couple of stitches forward, reverse, and I'm going to stitch all the way to that folded line. I don't want to go beyond it. I'm going to reinforce that. And I'll come again on the other side. So that's now been stitched, and that's fine. So we're going to turn this now over to the right side. But in order to reduce that bulk, we need to snip away some of this excess. So I'm going to snip up and take this triangle out. I'm going to do the same over this side. I'm also going to just take the little bits on the facing itself away from the equation. So now what I can do is fold this over and with a point turner, very carefully point out those corners, and I can give the whole lot of press. And what you'll notice is that where we've stitched at the 5/8 seam allowance, it is starting to pull in the seam allowance down those side seams. So I'm going to continue pressing those side seams flat with the seam allowance, ready to mitre the bottoms of them. Right, so that's now been pressed. So we have folded this in, pressed it, and we've done the side seams and they're all sitting lovely. So the final thing I'm going to do, just to finish off this facing, is just run a top stitch across, and it's mainly for aesthetics purposes. You can leave it without, because you will be top stitching this into position, but it just looks really smart. So I'm going to run a top stitch and that will be finished.